Welcome to Heart, where we break the silence, bridge the gaps, and bring real conversations about mental health to the forefront. I'm your host, Lee Yaffe, founder and director of The Long Short Road. My guest today is Rabbi Ephraim Levin. Hi, Ephraim.
Hi, Lee.
Rabbi Levin is the founder of Cogwell, a nonprofit organization established in 2018 at the University of Pennsylvania. His work in mental health advocacy began in 2008 when he convened a healthy living advisory board composed of Penn-affiliated professionals to address the growing mental health crisis on college campuses. Rabbi Levin currently serves as an associate chaplain under the chaplain's office at Penn and has co-directed Chabad at Penn with his wife since 1990. In addition, he is a chaplain at the Philadelphia VA Medical Center and has served on the board of Tikva, Advocates for the Jewish Mentally Ill, since 1992. He holds a BS in psychology from Georgetown University and received his rabbinical degree from the Lubavitcher Yeshiva. Welcome to the show. I'm
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to
here.
be here.
This is so fun. I guess as part of the intro, I will also share that I don't know, what was it now, 4 or 5 years ago, when I was working at Penn, I was involved with Cogwell. So this is kind of a cool full circle moment to be doing this.
Absolutely. We miss you and we appreciated all your efforts, and it was a great help.
Listen, it was so fun. It was so great. And I'm excited to talk to you about it. So
Thank you.
I guess
Thanks for
let's
having me.
start with, could you tell me a little bit about the history and the founding vision of Cogwell? Like, what is Cogwell? What does it stand for? Why did you start it? You know,
Okay.
give us that back.
Sure. So Cogwell stands for cognitive wellness. Um, it originally maybe was, we called it a healthy living advisory group, student task force. But actually, one of the students at Penn named it Cogwell, one of the nursing students. And I think, college campus is a time when person's away from home for the first time. And it's exciting, right? Because you start doing things on your own, and it's very exciting, to have the opportunity to move forward independently. But at the same time, there's a lot of new things, and you know facing a lot of stress and anxiety and being away from home for the first time, that can create what I would call the mental health crisis on campus that exists. And so our goal, or informing Cogwell, was to teach students, skills to be able to intervene and be there for their friends and those that are around them, because statistics show stress and anxiety on college campuses across the US is way above 50%, maybe getting 75%. So that was really what we hope to do, is to lessen the mental health crisis and make campuses a safer and better place for students to be.
And to empower the students to support each other, it sounds like, right?
Right.
To be that approach.
The inspiration, in a way, was we there's an interesting statistic that shows that when somebody's on campus and they're struggling,
Mhm.
the first person they'll go to is a friend.
Mhm.
Before their family, before professional, they'll go to a friend.
Yeah.
And I think that having that in mind, and that statistic, some statistics that the Active Minds is, which is another major college campus mental health group, but they have that. And we had been on campus, through the Chabad House for many years, doing peer-to-peer work. And I think it wasn't that hard of a jump, to be honest, that our peer-to-peer work in Judaism and getting peers to draw their friends to Jewish things, well, maybe that would work to broaden the net of support among students,
Right.
especially the fact that they're going to friends. We wanted to normalize the conversation around wellness.
Yes.
And we had done this conference on Viktor Frankl. It's like the 100th year since his birth, back,
Wow.
I think, in 2005 or six. And so we did, I think that conference on Frankl and searching for meaning was a spark to create something that would go on, in terms of like wellness and positive psychology. So
Mm.
we those kind of things came together for us
Wow,
in,
that's really
in
cool.
thinking about it. Personally, helped to organize that conference. I was a psych major at Georgetown, and back in my college days, I worked in some mental health hospitals. So
Mm.
personally, I was very familiar with people going through some very difficult challenges in mental health.
Yeah.
And, since the 80s, I didn't really think about it that much until, the late 2000s started on campus. And, that I guess personally for myself, I realized maybe I can bring some of that experience around mental health back and try to make a difference.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what a place to do it. I mean, we've talked about this, but like Penn is that's a work hard and play hard school, and kids are struggling. Like, let's be real, you know.
Yep,
It's
the Ivy League is the pressure's higher. We say that statistics, stress and anxiety, that's across the US. And then you come to a place where everybody is number one in their class and and people, don't want to don't want to admit what they're going through or not comfortable. It really our student, yeah, it became very apparent.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. So one of the main areas that you focus on in Cogwell is active listening and that like peer support. And I think people, I'm realizing that there's a lot of words or phrases that people know through the zeitgeist, but don't actually know what it means. So like, what is active listening? Because people were like, what do you mean? I listen. I know how to listen. So, what is active listening and why is it such a vital skill, I think, in general, but also like, why was that the skill that you focused on for college students?
So active listening, and I'm kind of got this from some people that I really respected that really cherish active listening and what it does. But I think the main thing is it means you're present, you're there for someone, you're being present, and you're the skills that active listening teaches us is ways of caring for someone, empathizing with them, and not judging them. I think that those are the main components that what that how I would describe it that we could feel that and why is that so vital is first of all a lot of us are called to be leaders in our lives, right? Leaders of our family, leaders of our community. Being able to be present there for people is so important as a leader.
Yeah,
And I think that just in that's one thing, let alone the fact that since 2000, the late 2000s, social media, what it has done to our society in general, especially the younger generation, things like FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And that has only increased the level of stress and anxiety in our communication and all the data showing it. And I think you don't need data. We all know what the phones do to us. And I think there is maybe a difference for those who grow up with it from being a child, that
right,
it's somehow worse, right? But so that's another reason that it's really needed these days, to and recognizing, yes, there's a level of coping that is used to happen more naturally, and
right,
now it's harder, even though everything, all the challenges may be the same.
right,
Maybe we didn't change so much, that and I don't think people get that, unfortunately, and they're trying, they want to judge the generation or
right.
It's wrong. They don't realize it's a different time, it's a different circumstances, different communication, and there's things around us in a broad, right? You know, so that's why those two things are why I think it's so vital. Also, I guess this is maybe going into the Jewish side.
I was going to ask you about anyway, but so great. Let's go there. But before we do, actually, just one
Yeah,
thing, I want to bring it back to this piece on social media because we are, on one hand, you could say, more connected than we've ever been, more communicating more than we've ever been, but our attention span and our ability to, the things that you just mentioned, hold space and be empathetic, is severely limited because our time is severely limited and we don't have the attention span for anything anymore. So I think that's what, and what you said about the judge, people judging the younger generation. I wonder what it would have been like for people who were living even, I'm 33. What would it have been like for me to be in high school with Facebook was just coming out when I was in 11th grade and that felt, suddenly everyone's lives are plastered all over the internet.
right.
We didn't know, we didn't understand yet how all consuming it was going to be to our ability to connect with people.
For sure. And I almost compare it to cigarettes, that
Yeah,
they came out, you had it in the movies and everything. It was cool. I remember taking a Spanish, learning to speak Spanish, and they would talk about how cigarette was almost like a coffee, have a
right,
cigarette, practice your Spanish, and like, and then with time, people realized what was the danger,
right,
right? And we get caught off guard. I'm hopeful that just like some of the dangers of smoking have been revealed,
right,
that we're learning. I do think we are learning, and I've seen some things at Penn actually that the newer generations are coming, and they have more awareness around wellness in some of these areas than they did 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. But for sure, it just it's all pervasive, like we're
yeah,
saying.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so then let's talk about this Jewish approach to active listening because again, I think it's so funny, being kind of in both worlds, like in the world of psychology and in the world of Torah, that there is overlap but there isn't, it's not necessarily like so well known that there's overlap in this area. So, can you walk us through that a little bit?
I think that for Chabad and how much we emphasize Ahavas Yisrael, right? Love for fellow Jew. We have Rabbi Akiva. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha zeh kla gadol b'Torah. The idea of Ahavas Yisrael and the great principle of the Torah, somehow its thread is through everything.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, it's interesting that the how is a Jew defined?
Hmm.
Rachmanim, Baishanim, Gemilas Chasadim. Jewish traits are giving, being merciful, and being humble.
Right.
This is Jew. This is Jew. This is how Judaism says that if people don't have those three traits, it says you should wonder about their lineage.
Wow. Right.
And I think, and look, if you look at these skills, to be a giver, to me, can also mean giving of your time
Right.
and giving space for others. And to be honest, Lubavitcher Rebbe was a master at that, right? And we see how many of his listening skills, giving place for someone and not judging, right, was so vital for his approach. But I think so. One is the giving can be just that idea of making space for another and being for them.
Right.
Being merciful means to not judge, right? And to empathize. And it is hard sometimes. I remember going to University of Alabama at the Chabad, and on their board, they had a RA, and she was
What
kind.
are Explain what an RA is for people who are out of the college system or who didn't go to college. What's an RA, Ephraim?
So RA is a resident assistant or a resident advisor. They live on the floor with the students and they're responsible. They're another student, but they're usually a senior. They're getting paid actually, and they're there to be as a assistant for the dorm, the floor.
Right.
And if anybody needs help, and they especially at the beginning of the year and for freshmen, and now people, some schools you have to live 2 years in the dorm. So you have an RA for 2 years. But to be honest, because of the high level of stress and anxiety, people come to college today and and just to go do their laundry,
Right.
it can be daunting.
Right.
And I'm not saying that lightly. I actually heard a story, one student who did have some mental health struggles, bright student at Penn, for the first year semester, every day she had to look on the map of the school to figure out how to get to class.
Wow.
3 or 4 months,
Wow.
every day.
Wow.
She was being honest.
Wow.
But the RA was kind of telling us, I get to the end of my rope with some of my students as a fellow student, and like people not being able to,
To cope. Right.
and and but these to not judge really means put yourself aside and just see it from their point of view.
Right.
And in a leadership position like an RA, and with some of the things that people go through today, they really need that. You need that to be able to hold space, and it could be hard. It could be hard, and
Be
for
very
what right, for what's easy for one person's not the same for another.
right.
And I'll put in another plug for Penn. To be honest, they are now requiring students to be in the dorm for 2 years.
Wow.
And initially, I didn't like that, and I thought it was just a way to make more money, to be honest, in the dorms. But now, looking back, I realized that it actually is a big help for the students
Right.
to be able to be in a stable place and not have to think about living off campus and roommate, many of the roommate issues of living off campus. To have a stable place for 2 years,
Right.
it really makes a difference. But anyways, going on the Jewish side, but merciful, I think that's what this is teaching us, and to be humble, right, or modest, to make room for somebody. It's hard. This is teaching us how to do that, and to give space for some, right? So
Yeah.
I think that really it's in line. It's in line. A Pirkei Avot teaches many of these skills, and it's yeah. So I feel good about that, and I hope that more people will see it and realize that in utilizing these things, it's not pandering. It's actually being what I consider authentic to our godly soul, and
Mm.
help us to bring out our godly soul, right? The whole idea, why is Ahavas Yisrael so important? So we can lift up the godly soul, and make kind of the body not the primary, right?
Mm.
In the animal soul. So I think to be conscious of this as a Jewish person, is really is important these days, and as important as Ahavas Yisrael is.
Right. Yeah. One of the skills that I remember learning from you when I was at Penn and when we were doing Cogwell together was the importance of sitting in silence with someone and not filling the space with a lot of words, right? Like if someone is confiding in you that they're struggling, don't add a word salad to the conversation. And just something that's coming up for me as we're talking about this is I think like in theory, this is so easy. And also, I think there's many barriers to active listening, right? We think we know what the other person's going to say, so we jump to finish their sentence, or we're not even listening to them because we're articulating in our minds how we're going to respond, or we're texting, or we're thinking about our grocery list, or da da da. I don't remember how many years ago it was that you and I did a active listening class together on Zoom, and we acted out the different ways of not listening. And I think that one of the participants didn't realize that it was part of the script that you were going to pick up your phone and start texting while I was telling you something. And the person, I could see their face was mortified that you would do that. And we were like, no, this is the simulation. We're practicing this. We prepared this part. And but it's like we are so, you know, we can't underestimate the value of being seen and holding space for someone, and it's also so hard to do.
Yes, yes. And sometimes it's counterintuitive because if you're sitting there in silence with someone, I think that we feel, oh, I'm not I'm not giving the right advice, or
Right.
I'm a failure, or you know what I mean? And we're not comfortable with silence. And what you're saying, but we don't realize how that first of all, besides the fact of clearing away our own head, that it takes time for the other person also to know where they're at,
Right.
and you're giving them space. And it could be even at the end of a conversation, you don't get a conclusion,
Right.
and maybe it's just saying, here, I'm here for you if you want to talk about it another time.
Right.
But being there in silence, I think, like you're saying, it is a great way of showing that, or making them not that let them know they're not alone,
Mhm.
even in that kind of uncomfortable moment. And it's very powerful, though,
Yeah.
that I and we yeah, I learned it. Listen, I have to give credit, Barbara Burley Mellett. She was our creator of, the training, and she taught us that. And we, like you're saying, we make it an integral part.
Yeah.
It's really important. Yeah.
So, for anyone who's listening who's like, okay, how do I actually like apply this skill to my life? How can people like what is the step that we could take to become better listeners? Because it really is practice, right? When I teach the suicide prevention classes and we talk about the importance of active listening with someone who's in crisis, I tell them, I'm like, don't wait until there's a crisis emerging to practice the skill. Like you should be practicing this every day with the people you live with your with your employees, with your employers, etc. Like, how can we start integrating this skill into our society?
I think is just recognizing the importance of creating a space
Mm,
where you can talk with someone. Sometimes we're approached by someone who needs our assistance and we're on the run, right? You're
right,
running here, you're running there. You don't really, or you're expecting a call. You have your schedule. Somebody
right,
comes out of the blue. To be able to say to someone, I can't, I really would like to help you, but can we sit down for a coffee, or can we do it, giving them some time frame, but then also creating that environment where you have time and place in the head to be able to be present.
right.
I think that is important, and people should feel comfortable to kind of make an effort to create that space.
Mm,
And it could also be in a case, and this is like a little bit of a different skill, but let's say you're concerned about somebody and they didn't come to you, but you're worried about them, maybe because of their behavior, or there's some kind of a difficult conversation you need to have and bring up that's not always comfortable to have, to go out of your way to create that space and give yourself a time, have a coffee with them. And then I would just throw in, use an I statement to you can always say, I'm concerned about you because, you haven't been coming out as much with us, or you've been in your room a lot. And, you know, we haven't seen you. Would you like to talk about it? and
mhm,
and just kind of bringing it up. But again, you have to kind of create that space, right? And with an I statement, you have to even bring it up. But I
right,
think that for people that were worried about using an I statement and also creating that space, it gives an opportunity. And maybe they say, no, I don't want to talk about it.
right,
Okay, it's not a failure. That's always, we're worried about that, right? Oh, they're
right,
going to say, I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
you say, fine, maybe at another time
Right.
when it's easier for you. The whole point is you're showing your concern, right? And you created that space and gives them an opportunity to think about it. And you could come back to it when they're ready.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you brought up that distinction that like you can make yourself open and available. They might not be receptive towards it in the moment, but that's not a failure because that door opening, the door stays open, so to speak, right? Even if the conversation doesn't happen right now, maybe it'll happen in a few hours or even in a week. You don't know what the power of having shown that to the person is. And also, I really appreciate the distinction on I statements because I think that when we are concerned about someone, we usually say you, right? You're a and what they hear is you're a problem. Not I'm concerned about you, but something is wrong with you, right? Yeah. It's
Yep, yep, and no, and that's so I think, and you can always, and as you're saying at the end, mention I'm here for you, if you'd like to come back to it, so that, I think that planting that seed in their mind is really, really helpful. And in so many scenarios, these things are useful on campus. These are business skills, how to work with people in business situations. It can be used. You have to figure out how at times and carefully. But I think that, and as professionals, maybe in healthcare or people that are working as a leader of, in whatever area, that it's really useful, let alone all our family situations where I think it's even more relevant, to be honest, where we have to care for loved ones. And there's a lot of, especially these days, amongst the youth and everybody, right? Extra stress and anxiety. We have to be aware of it and try to work with them. And the other piece of this also is meeting someone where they're at, because in mental health and wellness, right, it's not a easy fix it. It can't come from the outside so much. You want to help someone that they come to it. and
right.
I and I think these approaches are really helpful for that. That
Yes.
you're there. And by the way, we don't give a certificate for any of this stuff. So I think that's significant because there can be times, and I think this is important to say, where maybe there's an issue that's beyond a person's ability.
Sure.
We're talking here today, lay people, right? And people in situations where you don't need a professional or on the surface. But if it's recognized that this is more serious, part of active listening is to try to help someone to get professional help, right?
Right.
And to work and recognize that there may be, we have our limits, and that how far we can go with this,
Right.
how important it is, but also to identify when something is more severe, and that it does need to be elevated, so to speak, or help. But that also means helping the person find that, because that's important, that it be self-motivated. But I think
Yeah. No, I think that's one fear that I hear from people a lot is like, what if I ask them if something is wrong and then it's something huge that I don't necessarily have the tools for? Okay, so at least you know what's happening so that now you can help them find the right support for who can support them, right? It's not about now I become
absolutely.
responsible for everything. We work together to create that safety.
Yeah, and it's important to know the difference, and right, and to not be, that helps to remember it, so we're not afraid to get involved, and
Yeah,
that it's not all on us, everything.
right,
Shouldn't
right.
be that way.
Definitely. Yeah. Ephraim, thank you so much for doing this with me. Thank you for your insight and your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Having me. I appreciate it. And it's exciting to be able to share the things we do. We work on college campuses. So if anybody out there is interested in having Cogwell come to a campus that they may know of, where we're always happy to talk to people and try to, Cogwell trained 1,500 students last year in the Delaware Valley primarily area. It's growing, we hope that it can grow more, but anyways, these skills are essential for anyone. So
Yeah. So everyone who's listening, you can visit cogwell.org. That's cogwell.org to learn more about the organization and to connect and reach out.
thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you and much success.
Thank you for tuning in to Heart to Heart. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is hope and help is within reach. Since 2019, the Long Short Road has been walking alongside at-risk individuals, offering trauma-informed programs, a non-emergency hotline, and a community that fosters healing. No one has to go through this alone, and we are here for you. Discover how the Long Short Road is changing lives. Visit www.thelongshortroad.com or email us at info@thelongshortroad.com to learn more. You can be part of this mission. Sponsorship opportunities for Heart to Heart are available. Honor a loved one, support your community, and help us make mental wellness resources accessible to those who need them most. Until next time, remember, love and connection are the greatest healers. This is Lee Yaffe reminding you, hope is here, healing is possible, and you are never alone. Together, we're walking this long, short road to a brighter future.